There is an energy inside you right now that the most powerful people in history treated as their most guarded secret. The ancient Egyptians called it Ka. The Chinese called it Qi. The Hindus called it Prana. The Hermetic magicians of Renaissance Europe called it the vital fire. Different names, same thing. And for thousands of years, knowledge of how to control it was passed down only in secret societies, mystery schools, and closed brotherhoods, because whoever mastered it gained something that most people will never have: the ability to shape reality with intention. I know how that sounds, but stay with me, because in the next 13 minutes, you're going to learn something that most people spend decades or entire lifetimes searching for. And the reason it's been kept from you has nothing to do with mysticism. It has everything to do with what happens when a person learns to stop leaking their energy and starts directing it. Section 1. The leak. Here's a question almost nobody asks. Why do some people walk into a room and the entire atmosphere changes? Why do some people seem to attract opportunity effortlessly, while others, equally talented, equally hard-working, seem to push it away? The answer the modern world gives you is personality, confidence, luck. But for 3,000 years, the answer given in every wisdom tradition on earth was the same: energy. Not in the vague, motivational poster sense, in a very literal, very practical sense. Franz Baden, one of the most rigorous Hermetic masters of the 20th century, described it this way: without control of your vital energy, you are, in his words, a leaf in the wind of the forces of the universe. You don't choose your direction, the wind does. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are leaking this energy constantly. Every uncontrolled emotional reaction, every hour of passive, mindless consumption, every time your attention scatters across 10 things at once instead of concentrating on one. Every night of broken sleep, every conflict you rehearse in your head 300 times before it happens. These aren't just bad habits. According to every major esoteric tradition, from Taoism to Hermeticism to yogic philosophy, these are the primary ways that vital energy leaves the body uncontrolled and unrecovered. And the result isn't just tiredness. It's a life that feels like it's happening to you instead of through you. Section 2. The hidden map. Now here's where it gets interesting, because when you strip away the symbolic language, the gods, the rituals, the mythology, what these traditions were actually describing was a remarkably consistent and practical map of how human energy works. Every tradition identified the same three things. First, energy can be accumulated. It's not fixed. The body isn't born with a set amount and slowly depleted. It can be built, stored, and amplified through specific practices that every tradition independently arrived at. Second, energy follows attention. This is perhaps the most important principle and the one most people misunderstand. The Hermetic masters said it plainly: energy moves where the mind directs it. This isn't a metaphor. It's a functional description of how directed concentration physically changes what the body does and what it attracts. Third, energy can be directed outward. The Kabbalists called this kavana, directed intention. Eliphas Levi, the 19th century occultist who influenced nearly every Western esoteric tradition that followed, called it the magnetic fluid. He wrote that a person who understands how to shape this force can turn thoughts into reality, desires into strength, and the very soul into light. Bold words. But consider this. Every high-performance tradition that exists, from elite military training to professional athletics to the most effective executive coaching in the world, has independently arrived at practices that map almost exactly onto what these traditions described thousands of years ago. Breathwork, focused attention training, visualization, intentional stillness, controlled emotional states. The language changed. The practices didn't. Section 3. The three pillars. So, what do you actually do? Every tradition converged on three foundational practices, not 10, not 50, 3. And the reason they've survived for millennia is simple. They work. Pillar 1. Reclamation. Before you can build energy, you have to stop losing it. The Taoist tradition has a concept called Jing, the foundational life essence stored in the body. They were obsessed with preserving it because they understood something modern neuroscience is only now beginning to confirm. The nervous system has a finite recovery capacity, and most of us blow through it before noon. The single most powerful reclamation practice requires nothing from you except one change. For the next 7 days, cut the 2 biggest energy drains in your life. For most people, this is reactive social media consumption and unresolved emotional tension with another person. Not because these are morally wrong, but because they are energetically expensive in a way that offers no return. This isn't a productivity hack. It's closer to what the Hermetics called purification, clearing the channels before you try to fill them. Pillar 2. Accumulation. The breath is the only function of the autonomic nervous system you can consciously control. And every tradition that ever developed an energy practice built it on breath, because they understood something profound. The breath is the interface between the conscious mind and the body's energy system. The practice is called Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, and it appears in virtually identical form in the Hermetic, Taoist, and yogic traditions independently. That convergence is not an accident. Here's the practice. Sit with your spine straight, right hand raised. Use your thumb to close your right nostril. Inhale slowly through your left. Count to 4. Now close the left nostril with your ring finger. Hold. Count to 4. Release the right. Exhale. Count to 8. Inhale right. 4 counts. Hold. 4 counts. Exhale left. 8 counts. That's 1 cycle. Do 10. Do this twice daily for 2 weeks and pay attention to what changes, not in some abstract spiritual sense, but in your baseline energy, your mental clarity, and most noticeably, in your emotional steadiness under pressure. The extended exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. The alternating pattern balances electrical activity between the left and right brain hemispheres. This is not mysticism, this is measurable physiology, and it has been practiced for 3,000 years because people noticed empirically that it worked. Pillar 3. Direction. This is where every tradition gets dangerous in the best possible way. Because once you've stopped leaking energy and started accumulating it, the question becomes, where do you point it? Aleister Crowley, whatever you think of him as a person, wrote one of the most precise definitions of what magic actually is. The art of transforming reality through disciplined will, and will is energy in its purest form. Strip out the word magic, and you have a description of every high-performing human being who has ever lived. The practice of directed intention is simple, but demands something most people are unwilling to give: singleness. One clear desire, one clear mental image, one undivided point of attention. Here is the exercise. Choose something you want to create or change, something real and specific. Now find a quiet space, close your eyes, and using the breathing technique you've just learned, bring yourself to a state of stillness. Not blank, still. There is a difference. From that stillness, bring the desired outcome into your mind, not as a wish, but as something that already exists. The Hermetic principle is, what is held clearly in mind, without doubt, without contradiction, begins to shape the field around you. Hold it for 5 minutes, daily, without exception. This isn't the law of attraction as it's been sold to you. This is the original practice that the law of attraction was a diluted and commercialized version of. The difference is the quality of the attention. Passive wishing has no power. Concentrated, emotionally clean, disciplined intention does. Section 4. The emotional dimension. The piece almost nobody talks about. There's one element of energy control that most people skip because it's the most uncomfortable. Your emotional body, is your energy body. They're not two separate things. The Taoist tradition mapped specific emotional states to specific organ systems, not symbolically, but physiologically. Unresolved anger stresses the liver. Chronic fear depletes the kidneys. Prolonged grief weakens the lungs. Modern psychosomatic research has mapped essentially the same relationships through a completely different methodology. What this means practically: you cannot have a disciplined energy practice and an undisciplined emotional life. They contradict each other. It's like filling a bucket with holes in the bottom. The breathwork fills it, the uncontrolled emotional reactions drain it. This is not about suppressing emotions. The traditions were very clear on this. It's about processing them rather than storing them. Every negative emotional state that you experience, acknowledge, and allow to complete its natural arc. That's energy that moves through you and becomes available again. Every negative emotional state that you suppress, deny, or endlessly ruminate on, that's energy that gets locked up in the system and stops moving. The single most underrated practice in this entire tradition is deliberate emotional completion. When you feel anger, grief, or fear, instead of suppressing it or catastrophizing it, you simply allow it to be present, observe it as an energetic state, breathe into it, and let it run its course. Most strong emotions, fully allowed rather than resisted, complete in under 90 seconds. That's not a mystical claim. That's what neuroscientist Jill Bolte Taylor documented in her research on the chemical half-life of emotional states in the brain. You now have the full map, not the diluted version, not the version that was sanitized and sold back to you as a morning routine checklist. The actual architecture that the mystery schools spent centuries protecting, because they understood that a person who masters their own energy becomes, in a fundamental way, no longer subject to forces they can't control. Stop the leak. Identify your two biggest energy drains and cut them beginning today. Build the reserve. 10 cycles of Nadi Shodhana, twice daily. The effect compounds. Direct the current. 5 minutes of single-pointed, emotionally clean intention. One thing, one image, every day. Complete the emotions. Stop storing what can be processed. What moves through you cannot control you. These are not new ideas. They are old ones, older than almost any institution you were raised inside of. They have survived because they are not based on belief. They are based on a very old and very careful observation of what human beings are actually capable of when they stop operating on default settings. The energy is already there. It's been there your entire life. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you're going to use it or let it use you.